major objectives of cybersecurity are to protect the important asset, which is nothing but information and other physical infrastructures from major threats, attacks, and challenges. The cyber attacks take many forms today due to the technological sophistications. Cyber adversaries employ automated and intelligent mechanisms to launch very critical and refined types of attacks which are very difficult to handle. Mostly these attacks are launched at very low cost too. So, keeping pace with the advancements in technology, the cybersecurity policies, strategies, and operations can be a great challenge to the government, business organizations, why not even to an individual. Cyber threats aim at critical, political, and infrastructural assets of a nation or its people. One of the trickiest elements of cybersecurity is a quickly and constantly evolving nature of security risks. The traditional approaches have attended the attacks on critical systems and protected them from biggest known threats. This automatically left the less important systems unattended and less dangerous risks unnoticed. This is not a good practice in today's environment. I would like to quote here Adam Vincent, the CTO Public Sector at Layer 7 Technologies, the security service provider to federal agencies including Defense Department organizations. He describes the problem as follows. Cyber threat is advancing quicker than one can keep up with it. The threat changes at a very faster rate than the idea of the risk. It is no longer possible to write a large white paper about the risk to a particular system. One would be rewriting the white paper constantly. What a testimony for today's level of cyber threats. Many more such incidents, publications, and sayings can be quoted just like this to justify the need for cyber security. Proactive and adaptive approaches are the need of the hour. Again, NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, recently issued the updated guidelines in risk assessment framework that recommends a shift towards continuous monitoring and real-time assessments. So this basically throws us some important concepts like understanding some of the main terminologies like vulnerability, threat, attack, and risk. Of course, we have been using these terms so far interchangeably, but there are a lot of differences as far as these terms are concerned. Let me just explain to you one after the other. Vulnerability. Any weakness in the system, product, or process that comprise the basic security principles. Thereby, the system becomes more susceptible to attacks. Threat. When there is a possibility for violation of security due to circumstance or capability or action or event, it may cause harm. So, threat is a possible danger to assets. The third is attack. It is a deliberate attempt to evade security services and violate the security policy of a system, the most dangerous. Next comes the risk, the possibility of suffering a loss. Risk is a fundamental part of operations. It is not something to fear, but something to manage. But any risk unnoticed or unobserved in the system may lead to vulnerability and subsequently to cyber attacks. We know the types of cyber threats are increasing in the landscape because of two important technological trends. One is the IoT, Internet of Things, that is connecting everything to the internet. The second one is data proliferation, that is the amount of data that is thrown out of this exchange. So the speed with which the malware spread, the multitude of organizations harmed, which include the critical infrastructure and the serious obstacles in restoring the corrupted data, once again underline today's priority of cyber security. The cyber attacks on the information and data on the internet can affect three fundamental principles of cybersecurity, namely confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We are going to discuss them in detail in the coming sections. There are three common categories of cyber threats based on this. We call in short as triads, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability as the triad. They are the attacks on confidentiality, attacks on integrity, and attacks on availability. Let's first look into the attacks on confidentiality. Stealing or rather copying the target's personal information. For example, attacks like credit card fraud, identity theft, or stealing Bitcoin wallets. These are some of the examples. Confidentiality attacks are the major portion of work of the international spies to acquire confidential information for, once again, the political, military, or economic gains. So they are very, very serious threats. Next comes the attacks on integrity. The common name used here is sabotage. Integrity attacks seek to corrupt, damage, or destroy the information or systems and the people who rely on the information. So here the offenders may range from script kiddies to international or national level attackers. Next comes the attacks on availability. Preventing a target from accessing by the genuine users is a most frequent occurrence today. For example, the ransomware and the denial of service attacks. Ransomware encrypted the target's data and demanded a ransom to decrypt it. Whereas a denial of service attack, also known as DOS attacks typically in the form of distributed denial of service, we call them as DDoS attack, floods the network resource with requests, making it unavailable due to jam. Once again, I would like to quote the World Economic Forum's report. The report of the World Economic Forum predicts the necessity for few approaches to handle the cyber attacks, and failure will have a severe impact of approximately $3 trillion by 2020. Cyber threats have now opened up new channels through social media as well as mobile technologies. All the threats ultimately lead to the breach of data privacy and security. Following are some of the emerging challenges for data protection and cyber security. They are the connected environment, more reliance on ICT, increasing number of users and adoption of technology, increasing number of smart devices and access, unrestricted or open access to information, lack of control mechanisms, international dimensions, increasing speed of data exchange process, scope for anonymous communication, growing sophistication of threats, movement of threats to mobile sphere, the big data myth, lack of preparedness to handle the upcoming challenges. This is very, very important. Next comes the compliance versus the risk management, and finally the inadequate and restricted handling of related crimes legally or the legal challenges. This is also dealt in this course. So, the main cybersecurity risks arise due to the increasing population and the better placement of technology to handle the challenges like the dependency on ICT and complete automation. Proper identification of threats that impact the organization's capability to conduct business is the very important need of the day. Therefore, risk assessment is imperative for every organization that depends completely on ICT infrastructure and automation of their activities. Risk assessment also provides proper measures, processes and controls to reduce the impact of risks the organizations face today. In this digital era, when everything is accessed and operated through cyberspace, security is an important concern. To understand the need for cybersecurity, different incidents, statistical reports are presented. Lack of security may lead to setbacks in financial matters, personal and professional operations. Important terms related to cybersecurity and different types of cyber threats are also covered. Cybersecurity is a broader term which protects all the hardware devices like routers, switches, and servers, etc., software, information, and the data that are part of the cyberspace. The security principles and challenges are also brought forward for your kind consideration. Thank you, learners. We'll meet in the next week course soon.